Well, good morning everybody. It's the 24th of August 2021. Try and be brief. My discussion today, you might say, is regarding the creation of the standard gauge velocity trains, and one of them is illustrated here, for the Melbourne to Albury line. They're under construction now. They're going to be, I think, longer trains than the current arrangement of 3 cars, and then they have another 3-car set. That's not going to be the case, I think. They'll either be 4 or 5-car trains, and they'll have a buffet, so 4 cars would be more or less a minimum, I would think. However, my idea right now is to discuss the concept of standard gauge services between Maryborough and Mildura, which has been raised in the past by other people. The idea being that they would have a locomotive set that had previously, in other words by that time, been used on the Albury line to go to 3 days a week Maryborough to Mildura, with new stations at places like St Arnaud and Donald and a couple of other places along the way. Only be 3 days a week, and then later on daily, I would expect a daylight connection off a broad gauge velocity from Melbourne to Maryborough. But further to that, I certainly would like to see V-Line take over to Melbourne to Adelaide rail service, and it's currently in its worst ever state, being old locomotive haul cars that squeak and all that sort of thing. They're not good riding cars, and only twice a week. It used to be up to a 19-car train overnight in both directions. Now, I'm not suggesting a return to that at all. What I have in mind is, as I said, roughly a 5-car set, of which at least 1 car would be rail bed, or even 2 cars that are rail bed with a snack bar car, and also a couple of 1 or 2 full economy class sitting cars, and they would operate twice daily. The rail beds would go over as first class by the daytime, 2-in-1 seating, and all the entertainment and everything that's provided by the rail bed type of cars that are operating from Brisbane up to Cairns on the Spirit of Queensland, for example, but these would be quite similar. And then at the other end of the line, they'd be converted to beds and operate out of Adelaide to Melbourne and vice versa. You'd spend several hours in each city and then convert them for that use and operate back to the other terminus. And if they wanted to consider doing either that, that's good. If they did not want to consider doing that, then they would have sets based in Ararat, which would run Ararat to Adelaide and return, and vice versa, 2 sets coming down and then meet in Ararat with a broad gauge train running via Ballarat to Melbourne. Now, these things are, in my opinion, quite viable and possible and cost effective in creating. The current twice-a-week system is just not adequate, and I can't see the return of sleeping car services on that line, really. It is, of course, possible. They have sleeping cars, but I get the feeling that a multi-use type of train, in other words, by day and by night, would give you the best possible use and benefit out of those cars, and I'll just put those ideas up there for anyone who might like to make civil and polite comments or discuss the issue. But I think the time has certainly come for Victoria and therefore V-Line to take over Melbourne to Adelaide, and as I said, potentially either that directly right through via Geelong and Cressy and Ararat, And by the way, there's nothing at Cressy, with all due respect to the place. It's just open farming country. Used to be a station there, and lines coming in from Melbourne and from Ballarat and going across to the Warrnambool line and so forth. But no longer is that the case, and it's a very small location. So the concept might seem to be rather radical and unusual to have a shuttle running from Ararat to Adelaide, but it might become the best option, because it also would be a lot faster than going via Geelong and Cressy to get to Adelaide. Several hours would be cut off the journey. Probably in the order of about 2 to 3 hours might very well be cut off the journey. Now, other people can argue about that, but I think if you sit down and do a properly considered concept, that's what you'd come up with. So anyway, I put the ideas out there, and anyone, as I say, who would like to make civil and polite comments would please be urged to do so. Thank you for viewing.